They're kept to browse the woods and hills of Arcadia, thorns and prickly brambles that thrive on higher grounds, and, no need to call them, come back themselves, their kids in tow, struggling to drag bags of milk across the threshold of the parlor. So, spare no efforts to shield them from the bite of frosts and icy winds. They need so little minding in exchange for all they give. Leave mangers brimming over with hay and roughage, and them in reach of what's stored in the loft all winter long. But when the west wind's gentle breezes summon them, the sheep and goats to summer in the outfields will make our way at crack of dawn and take to chilly pastures. The day still young, and grass a frosty glisten, while dew the cattle love still lingers on fresh shoots. Then, when risen sun has honed a thirst and crickets stir the plantings and their brittle song, I'll bring the flocks to springs and standing pools and let them drink from hardwood troughs. But by high noon, I'll have them forage for and find a shady glen, where one of those ages-old great-girthed oaks of Jupiter stretches out stout branches, or a thickly planted holly grove lowers in its own hallowed shadows. I'll have them drink again cool runs of water and browse again until the setting sun, when twilight starts to chill the air, its dews refresh the grazing, and cries of birds ring out again, kingfishers from the shoreline, wood warblers from the woody groves. And the last working animal in the set, which brings me to heaven's gift of honey, or manna, if you will. Lend kind ears this part, my Lord Maecenas, in which I'll tell about a small society compromising systems worthy of your high esteem. Its leaders great of heart, its customs, character, and conflicts, these I'll report bit by bit as is appropriate. A humble theme, but far from humble is the fame for one spared by the gods if his voice attract Apollo's ear. First, find and site a station for the bees, far away from the wind, for wind obstructs them bringing home whatever they may forage. With neither ewes nearby nor budding kids to trample down the blossom, to say nothing of a heifer straying through the dew and flattening growing grass, and keep out from their grazing grounds the lizard with its ornate back, the bee-eater and other creatures of the air, not least the fabled swallow Procne, her breast still bearing stains from her bloodied hands. For all of these lay widespread waste. They'll snatch your bees on the wing and bear them off in their mouths, a tasty snack for greedy nestlings. Make sure you have at hand clear springs and pools with moss-fringed rims, a rippling stream that rambles through the grass, and have a palm or outsized oleaster to cast its shadow on the porch, so that in spring, that they so love, when sent out by the queens, first swarms of young and new bees issued from the hive may play. A riverbank nearby might tempt them to retire from the heat, and on their way and in their way, a leafy tree entices them to tarry. Whether water there is standing still or flowing lob rocks into its middle and willow logs to lie crosswise, so they'll have stepping stones where they can take rest and spread their wings to dry by the fires of the sun. All this in case an east wind occurred to sprinkle them while they were dawdling, or dumped them head first in the drink. Let all be gay with evergreen, cassia spreads a fragrant thyme, and masses of aromatic savory. Let violet beds absorb moisture from the rills and runnels. So, after Virgil's Georgics, I thought I would read something I actually wrote, which was an introduction to an exhibition I was in 2003, and it wasn't something some of the agricultural projects I'm involved with now seem to have sprung from this exhibition, although that wasn't my intention when I actually participated in it and by what I wrote. How, other than in its seasonal contingencies and relative geographic isolation and the social consequences thereof, is contemporary rural life or culture different from that of the rest of us? from a coalition of 18th century Southern aristocrats and slaveholders called our Founding Fathers. We Americans inherit a legacy of myth-making that asserts the superior moral virtues of agrarian social structures and practices. There is much to admire about Thomas Jefferson of Virginia and his friends. Yet, might we not finally see the debate concerning the moral benefits of rural life to Abraham Lincoln of Illinois? As quickly as he could, young Abe ran away from the drudgery and boredom of his father's Midwestern farm. Eventually, he freed the slaves of the entire nation. Since then, with few exceptions, farming without slavery in America has been farming as an industrial enterprise. My work for Roots of Renewal, that was the name of the exhibition, though it references a traditional farm culture in America, is actually about an art practice, which is the only practice I know. And the only analogy between farming and art I can make is long hours, hard work, no pay. Inventive men included 250 linear feet of hand-painted signboards running as a continuous frieze across the tops of the gallery walls. The quotations on the boards are taken from a 1909 handbook titled Handy Farm Devices and How to Make Them by Rolf Koblé. The messages alternate between practical advice and moral admonition, such as, quote, never confuse board foot measure with square feet, cheerfulness is as contagious as the measles, the room in which to kill cattle and hogs should not be less than 15 feet square, unquote. Together with Orland Mitchell, a retired Congregationalist minister and former college president, I built a dozen or so of the handy devices illustrated in this book. The objects include, among other things, a fleece hopper, a feed box, and a gate that won't sag. These are painted the same colors as the signboards, white, and farm implement gray, green, yellow, and brown. After the rest of the exhibition was installed, these simple but valuable things were scattered among the other artworks in the show, but without lighting or wall labels. This anonymity is intentional. The idea, in part, is that an art exhibition is like the organization of any farm or house. You can plan all you want, but the recycling bin must go somewhere. And wouldn't you know, when the rest of your color scheme is blue, that bin comes only in green. Michael Mercil, November 2003. And I'll just read you what the signboard said, and after this I'll pass this around while I'm reading the rest. So these are quotations from actually, this is the book, Handy Farm Devices and How to Make Them. Inventive men are constantly contriving simple but valuable things. It is poor economy to buy cheap tools. Good nature is as contagious as the measles. An outside door looks better with glass in the upper half. When tillage begins, other arts follow. Do not confound footboard measure with square feet. Diligence is the mother of good luck. Too much paint injures a tin roof. Labor is rest from the sorrows that greet us. Teach your boy to use tools and use them right. Whatever is worth doing at all is worth doing well. Lemon juice will lighten most woods. Nothing lightens labor so much as cheerfulness. It's a mighty nice thing to have a good supply of cold water. You must cut your coat according to your cloth. Many people would not care to keep their potatoes in a sectional bin. Leave your children a good reputation and an employment. Make a good ladder and keep it painted. Man's fortunes are according to his pains. Make a slatted stall just high enough so the cows can't jump out. Success comes not by wishing, but by hard work bravely done. The room in which to kill cattle and hogs should not be less than 15 feet square. Never buy what you do not want, it is not cheap. 12 gallons of milk should make about 10 pounds of cheese. It is not what we earn, but what we keep that makes us rich. Very good coops can be made at small cost from empty barrels. Money is a good servant, but a bad master. For convenience and emergencies, no line equals the bowline. They can who think they can. A sharp eye must be kept on the frost item. Consider the end. So, use that little bit to pass around. And of course, time always goes faster than we think. I'm going to read a little bit, a couple short excerpts from actually a local writer from Ohio, Gene Logston. And he sort of picks up in many ways. He's from up near Sandusky, or in Sandusky County. And I feel like he picks up in a lot of ways where Virgil leaves off. And here he's talking about pasture farming. One of the greatest, the name of the book is All Flesh is Grass, The Pleasures and Promise of Pasture Farming. One of the greatest potential advantages of pasture farming, yet not much talked about, is that it can allow the simultaneous pursuit of orcharding. A considerable number of fruit and nut trees can be grown on larger pastures without decreasing significantly the amount of pasture grass. In fact, the grazing animals come in handy for cleaning up the dropped fruit, or they can be allowed to eat some or all of the fruit as part of their regular fare. Apple trees seem particularly suited for pasture orcharding. The animals love apples and keep them cleaned up as they fall. I have noticed that our pasture apple trees sometimes have blemish-free fruit without spraying, possibly because livestock eat the drops and the worms in them. We have learned to grow peach trees where the chickens range freely. The hens scratch around the trees and are apparently controlling the peach tree borer. Remember that you can't plant trees in a pasture unless you protect them until they outgrow the reach of cows and horses. One of the reasons that I planted some fence rows to red cedars is that animals won't eat them. That can be risky. If animals won't eat the trees you plant, the tree seeds may eventually cause you a weed problem. Here is a list of trees I like or dislike in pastures purely from my own experience and biases. You will want to make your own choices based on what grows best in your climate. As much as possible, especially on small pasture farms, be partial to species that can serve more than one purpose for you. A tree that gives shade is not as beneficial as one that gives shade and food, too, or shade, food, and eventually firewood or good lumber. I mentioned apples and peaches. All the temperate zone fruit trees should be considered. Citrus fruits are not particularly liked by livestock, hogs and chickens in my experience, but they may be some kinds unfamiliar to me that would be practical. I would not buy expensive fruit trees for pasture orcharding unless I had in mind a particular variety I wanted to develop for the people market. Apple and peach trees can be grown easily from seed. The seedlings may not resemble the parent variety, but often these wild trees bear fruit just as good, and you might even get fruit from a seedling with better quality than a parent. When I planted my pasture apple trees, I merely scattered buckets of cider pressings full of apple seeds along the fence row in the late fall. So many grew that I had to thin them out, or rather, I protected the ones I wanted to keep and let the livestock eat the others. Of course, if you have animals grazing apples or any fruit, you may find a wild seedling coming up wherever the livestock defecates.